Hitoshi Yamagami is an engineer from Japan. He's been working at Nintendo since 1997 and has been on all three Super Mario Bros. Remake development teams WWDC, WII, and now Super Mario Odyssey. He has developed over 30 games at Nintendo, including 8-bit games and DS and 3DS games, which he helped CO design and program. The other two CO designers for SMP were Koichi Hayashida and Takeshi Furukawa. Yamagami-san has always done contract work at Nintendo. He first worked on the Kiwi processor. He later worked on the Nintendo DSi, the Nintendo DSi XL, and helped on Animal Crossing and Mario Kart DS. And currently he's the lead engineer for Super Mario Odyssey and work on the new 3DS LL. The Nintendo 3DS LL. What was your role on the Nintendo 3DS LL? It's a handheld where we have achieved 60 FPS in both handheld and docked mode with 2 screens. It was with him that I was able to talk to him about his new project SMP. Miyamoto-san is the chief designer for the Mario franchise and, along with Hayashida-san, he was responsible for shaping the original SNES. SMP is a new game, but rather than a new generation, it's SMP in the S-View view. Nintendo Famitsu. One of the things that is in the Switch design book is a painting of what is clearly the Mushroom Kingdom, but which looks nothing like it. So what made you want to develop a new Mushroom Kingdom? Unshao Ishizuka. At first, I thought we would develop something completely different. Famitsu. You have to think a lot about things like this. The Nintendo of today isn't Nintendo of yesterday. Ishizuka. Right. I thought of doing something that everyone could enjoy. It's a challenge that's hard to give a simple answer to. Famitsu. So now we've seen all the big things. There is still some small things. The system needs a game for people to get hooked. What kind of game did you want to make? Famitsu. That's an answer. We've heard that from Satoshi Tajiri, Shigeru Miyamoto, and Hirokazu Tanaka. Ishizuka. It's because I didn't know what I wanted to make and didn't know what was possible on a console. But once the decision was made that we would work on games for the WII, I started to get an idea. Famitsu. In other words, when the game was announced, people at Nintendo said that looks like a PlayStation game, but we're gonna make it. Ishizuka laughs. In other words, everyone thought we were doing it, but Satoshi was still optimistic. When I asked him, hey, what kind of game should we make? He said, keep in mind that WII is a home console, so it should be a WII game. I think that's what he said. As the game was announced, I wanted to know how far I could push the system. He said, keep in mind that WII is a home tel system and have people play it at home. That sounds like you're making a PlayStation type game, but instead he asked, what sort of WII type game? They said they want you to make it. Of course, the game doesn't have a long story, and so it's a casual game that anyone can play, but for some reason when I saw the trailer and read the description, it just seemed like PlayStation 3. That's when I started thinking maybe you could sell that type of game on WII. The graphics would be pretty well done, and maybe people would be willing to pay for a game that was meant for the PS3. I can imagine that the WII could handle the graphics fairly well for a game like this. It's interesting to see that what might appear as easy money for someone else might not be worth much to you. Yesterday I was thinking about my first official day in Spain. Yesterday, the school I'm at had a field day and a picnic. I was just reading an article about the school's field day, and they had a lot of fun things. They had all the things they normally do, lunches, music, games, etc. Plus some new things like these giant foam things that you go down a slide on. And guess what the great thing was? It's just nice that they always find ways to do new things. After the middle school students went home, the elementary kids came out to play. They had about 20,000 zero balloons. They were outside bouncing around and having fun. They had all kinds of activities. Plus there was free food. Last week, 4 of the teachers from the elementary school and I went to the movie Wild. It was pretty good. It got a bad review in the paper. We've watched a few movies together over the years. We are usually on the same wavelength. Well, when the sun came out yesterday, we took the whole class outside to play. The kids who were already outside were more than happy to run around. We had lunch in the shade and for a while I sat on a picnic table eating my sandwich and watching. This summer has been full of laughter. I've been able to tease and cajole. I've been able to remember to read and use my time more wisely. I've been able to soak up every moment, to remember to look at the life and the moment and not the heat and the summer. There were days this summer I could barely scrape together a couple of sentences to use as my daily affirmation to myself, and when I did, I thought it a little strange. It was a little strange, but it made sense because it was right. You're right, I was thinking to myself. I am right. We've had such a wonderful summer. I thought I should be more miserable than I was, if that's what I was supposed to be writing about. It's not that there was nothing to be miserable about, it's just that, like I said, there were always little moments to remind me of the humanity of it all, especially when I was being lazy and snoozing in a cab in the middle of a crazy heat wave. I woke up one morning, tossed off my pink silk nightie, put on a quick turquoise silk bathrobe and ran downstairs in my panties to grab my phone from the kitchen. The phone felt heavy in my hand. I got to the kitchen and turned it over. It was going crazy. Bright green words were flashing up on the screen. All the contacts were calling each other. It was ringing, vibrating and flashing with messages. For a minute I thought it might be my sister with some horrible emergency. I've never met another Lauren, but my sister is very popular, so I assumed it was her and my heart stopped beating. I looked at the phone for what felt like an hour and eventually called my sister's boyfriend. He said it was him who'd called me and the people calling me had been texting my sister from a blocked number. It was a panic attack, a major one. I couldn't breathe properly and I couldn't eat or sleep for days. I wondered why it had to be me. I wondered why I couldn't get a break, and I asked, why did he have to die? I think about that night when I'm by myself, and I wonder how many people would remember if I just disappeared. It was on my mind in that taxi as I thought about my brother, and the way the darkness around me weighed down on my heart in a way that made it impossible to move. I thought about my mom, about his kids, about how it felt to lose a sibling, about how much it hurt, and about how little I deserved all the pain. The driver shook his head as he turned onto his street, a familiar building giving way to the side alley. We passed by a small beach on the way there and he pointed out the beauty of the coast and the sound of the waves against the sand, a silence in the air that seemed to be filled by his soft voice. I took his hand and pulled him towards me, pressing my lips onto his and not caring about the rocks or the sand getting stuck in my hair. He held onto my waist, guiding me back to the car and waiting for me to sit before taking my hand once more and heading back to his house. Every step he took with me was filled with love. I could feel it all the way into my heart. We sat at the table and talked for hours. There was no space in the conversation. All I could do was sit there, my heart in my hands, and listen. He wasn't whispering or even whispering loud. He wasn't searching for answers and he wasn't seeking confirmation. Said that my book needed to be published and he was supportive of my decision. I told him that it was really hard for me to get up to write at first and he didn't laugh at me. He gave me advice and then we sat for another hour or so just talking and then it was time to go. When I left he told me that it was very late and that it would be really nice if I called him when I had a book published, that he'd send me a free one. That blew me away. I had just met him but he really meant it and I've kept in touch with him since then. If you want to be a writer, you've got to have a firm belief in your talent. There will be days when it's hard and you're you're only going to write one word and you think, why bother? But every writer has their one word day. Yours might be when you suddenly wake up in the morning and think, right, that's it. I don't have any techniques for how to get started and get in the mood, but I do have a method of focusing the mind. I'll be on the train or a plane and suddenly think, what if I write about the sound of cars? What if I write about how I drove to my son's school one day and the news came on and said there were bullet holes in the side of the school? You're trying to hold on to your train of thought while at the same time avoiding that horrible thought. And the fun is in not knowing what you're going to write. You don't know where it's going to go. You can't predict it. It's like driving down the highway. Every turn you take, it takes you somewhere else. But there are many roads that lead to the same destination. The fun is not knowing where you're going to take it. That's kind of the definition of a horror story, right? In the sense of I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm going to be surprised at the destination. That's what I try to do with the story. I feel as though that's how I'm going to write it. You've got to have a shocker somewhere. To do this for 3 weeks is crazy. I've never done that. Todd, the thing that we like about this format is that it seems to allow for a little freedom of form, or at least a freedom of arrangement. Scott, yeah, you're not churning out a script on a computer in this one. The objective is to create a feeling of the cliffhanger at the end of a serialized story and a sense that the book is a little bit different every single time you read it. The process of producing a radio program is different in that you have to handwrite it out, but because of this we don't have to think too much about how we're structuring the stuff. We can go into it with the mindset that we have to make enough transitions and to have enough information for someone to jump in and follow along. There's a lot of individualism that comes with radio production that we're not used to having in writing scripts for the web.